Yes. Sir has joined. Prem sir, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Suraj. I can see Suraj.
Good
also.
evening, sir.
Hi, Suraj.
Suraj and today's presenter is Suraj's younger brother, Satvik.
Oh, nice. Okay. Hi, Satvik. I keep
Hello,
seeing
sir.
your photo from your dad's post. Okay. Sure. So, shall we start? Or all others have joined?
They're joining, sir. We'll wait for 1 minute.
No problem. Okay.
Meanwhile, let me take the privilege and honor to introduce and welcome my teacher and mentor for motivation, Dr. Prem Kumar sir. He's assistant professor in the Department of Surgery in Bangalore Medical College and Research Institute. Both me and
Yes,
another
Kishan,
mentor, Dr. Suraj.
Yes.
Both of us, yeah.
Yeah, both of us.
Students.
Yes.
And we learned a lot from sir. More than learning, he motivated us to become what we are now. Okay, we are
Yes.
surgeons. Maybe big amount of credits goes to him also for making us surgeons today. And he always made sure in every class he made sure that students are motivated to the core, and he always inspired us being a role model. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us today. Prem sir, can you hear?
I can hear you, Kishan.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for
Thank
being
you.
with us
Thank
today.
you. Thank you so much.
And for your constant support and motivation, sir.
Thank you, Kishan. It's a good thing that you're doing this program. Helpful for all the students, I guess.
Suraj, anything you want to add? Good, sir.
It's a privilege to be with Sir Prem sir. Thank you so much for coming today and chairing this session, sir. It's a privilege to be with you today, sir.
Thank you, Suraj. Thank you. So nice of you.
Satvik, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we'll start then. Okay, be slow and be confident. Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Wherever you want, you can stop him and start asking questions.
Okay, sure.
And we'll end with the management part and whatever you want to teach them, add them.
Okay, sure. That should be good.
Okay. Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. Please,
good mo-
over to you, Satvik.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, sir. I thank Dr. Kishan, sir, who has given me the opportunity to present today's case. I'll be starting with the presentation now.
Just one moment, Satvik. A few things I wanted to add, or even before the presentation goes on. Okay. I
Yes,
hope
sir.
all the students are listening to this. So what I wanted to add is what is the main learning objective of today's session, okay, or any other class, clinical class, is to know how to present it in the exam. Okay, that is the main idea. So what the students has to know is that how to approach the examiner is a very important aspect. He must be a good student, he has read well, everything, but in the exam does not perform well because he doesn't know how to approach the examiner. So one of the main trick what all the students should understand is that should understand the examiner's mind. You know what the other person, the other side of the table is he thinking, what is he expecting from you, in which way he wants you to go. So the one moment you are in sync with the examiner, the things go on very smoothly. Okay. Second point, for the MBBS student, the main thing what for learning purpose is that how to approach a case. We are not bothered about your perfect diagnosis, neither about the management in detail, but at least you should be knowing how to approach a case and some brief idea about the management. So do not try to go very too much beyond things. Try to know your basics very good. I think that will make you where you can pass your exams very easily. And added on that, of course, you read for your knowledge, and when it's asked, when you use your knowledge, I think you can score very good marks. It's a simple trick. So I hope the students will understand that the idea is to know the basics very well. Okay, so let's start with your
Sir,
presentation.
sorry to interrupt. Many surgery residents also joining our session, sir. So
Very
many
good.
first year, second year PGs also are present
Okay.
in this session. Please guide them also. Thank you.
Sure, sure. Thank you, Kishan.
Satvik, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Here is a 55-year-old male patient named Mr. XYZ, who is hailing from Nelamangala, who is Hindu by religion. He has studied up till 10th standard, and he is an agriculturist by occupation, earns around rupees 7,000 per month, and he belongs to upper middle class socioeconomic status according to modified BG Prasad classification. He was examined on 25th of April 2020. He was admitted on 25th of April 2020 and was examined on 27th April 2020.
Okay.
He came with chief complaints of blackish discoloration of the right little toe since 5 days, pain in the right foot since 3 days, fever since 3 days, and discharge from the right little toe since 2 days.
Okay.
History of presenting illness. The patient was apparently well 5 days back. Then he noticed discoloration in the right little toe, which was sudden in onset, initially pale in color, then progressed to bluish purple, and then eventually blackish in color on the same day. He developed fever 3 days back, which was sudden in onset, high grade, continuous type, which subsided on medication and was associated with chills and rigors with no diurnal variation. He has pain in the right foot since 3 days, which was sudden in onset, progressed from mild to moderate intensity, throbbing in nature, and is present continuously. It aggravates on keeping the foot down and reduces slightly on elevating the foot. There is no diurnal variation and no radiation to other parts. He also complains of discharge from the right little toe since 2 days, which is scanty in amount, yellowish in color, purulent in nature, foul smelling, and non-blood tinged.
Okay, just one question here. Just
Yes, sir.
go back. Go back to the previous. Yeah, here you're telling that it aggravates on keeping the foot down and reduces. There's no diurnal variation. What do you mean by that?
Sir, pain will be present throughout, sir. It is not like it is present in the morning or evening time.
Okay, anything you kept in mind about any pain which occurs?
Sir, if it is neurogenic or something, then it will be throughout, sir.
Okay, no, not like that. One of the good thing what you have to keep in mind is something called as nocturnal cramps. Okay, the nocturnal cramp occurs during the night only, which doesn't present in the day. And one of the thing which has to be kept in mind and should be differentiated. Okay,
Okay, sir.
yeah, nocturnal cramp. Yeah, continue next. We'll come back. If at all required, we'll go back to the slides.
Okay, sir. He also gives history of intermittent claudication in the right leg since 1 year. The claudication distance was initially 1 kilometers, which gradually reduced to become 100 meters 1 month back.
Okay, now Satvik, one small thing here. You're telling that he's having a history of intermittent claudication since 1 year. Okay,
Yes.
but you told in your old chief complaint is since 2 days, isn't it? So
Yes.
I want to know, see if there is, what is his main chief complaint? Since when is his chief complaints? So this is a history of presenting illness. Okay, he says that he's having intermittent claudication since 1 year. So
Yes, sir.
when you have to put a chief complaint, there has to be a period of normalcy. So did he have a period of normalcy?
Sir, he was
Are you understanding? See, for example, he's having say pain in the foot, that is intermittent claudication since 1 year, and since
Yes, sir.
1 month has the claudication pain disappeared, he's become normal, and then suddenly 3 days back he started seeing all the features, chief complaints which he saw.
Sir, the pain didn't disappear, sir, but the claudication distance was reduced, sir. Earlier, he
Yes.
was able to
Yeah.
walk for 1 kilometer without any pain, sir.
Yes, here, so what usually, Satvik, is that if there is no period of normalcy, if you go back, if you see how you started your history, go back to the first slide of your history of presenting illness.
Sir.
See, the patient was apparently well 5 days back. He was not well, actually. Okay, so here what happens is if there is no period of normalcy, that means this is not normal. So you have to start your history of the presenting illness from the day he started developing problems. So I here the history starts from 1 year. You know, the pain starts from 1 year and it has been continuously happening. And now since 5 days, few things have happened. That is discoloration has happened and probably the bluish, whatever you're telling, then you started developing fever since 3 days. And
Yes, sir.
you're understanding?
Yes, sir.
This
Yes,
is
sir.
how, if there is no period of normalcy, it becomes your history of presenting illness. And that becomes your chief complaint. So your history starts like the patient was apparently well 1 year back. He was never
Yes.
well, apparently well 5 days back also, isn't it? You always had the
Yes, sir.
intermittent claudication problem.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're
Okay, sir.
understanding? So here, go back to the next slide, the intermittent
Sir, so
claudication.
we'll start the patient was apparently well 1 year back.
Yes,
Then he had
yes,
intermittent claudication, and
yes.
after telling everything, we'll come to 5 days back.
Yes, yes, because you understand only simple statement for all the students. If
Sir.
there is a period of normalcy, then the previous history becomes your past history and the present complaints become the presenting illness. But if there is
Sir.
no period of normalcy, that means the whole history since 1 year. Understood?
Sir,
Am I clear?
yes, sir. Sir, one doubt, sir. Here
Yeah.
in chief complaint, he didn't give about anything about intermittent claudication, sir.
Fine. See, the chief complaint is why he has come to the hospital. Okay, that you have
Yes,
to
sir.
understand. He came to the hospital because since 2 days he is having color discoloration and fever. But his history starts from 1 year.
Okay, sir.
So the history is I was apparently well 1 year back, and then all the intermittent claudication started, and then finally now since 5 days, what has happened has to be told.
Okay, sir.
Okay, it doesn't make sense, isn't it? That he was apparently well 5 days back. He wasn't normal, isn't
Okay,
it?
sir.
That itself falls down the main thing, history.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, yeah.
Sir, from where should I continue?
No,
sir?
next page, an intermittent claudication. We can go.
So next slide.
Next slide. Yeah, history of intermittent claudication.
He also gives history of intermittent claudication in the right leg since 1 year. The claudication distance was initially 1 kilometers, which gradually reduced to become 100 meters 1 month back.
Okay, Satvik. So one classical. See, I will keep asking you some classical questions, which every
Yes.
examiner will be asking. Okay. So the student should be ready with this answers for these classical questions. These are called classical exam questions. Okay. So
Sir.
what is a differential diagnosis of intermittent claudication? What
Sir,
all can be this other diagnosis for intermittent claudication?
Sir, intermittent claudication is basically because of reduced blood supply to the muscles, and there will be
Okay.
accumulation of P substance and other metabolites in the
No,
muscles.
you
which
should
will-
tell what exactly, how Das describes. What does intermittent claudication? Claudi means
Sir, catchy pain, sir.
eye limp.
Eye limp, sir.
Yes. Okay. So claudi means eye limp. So intermittent claudication is that it is a reproducible pain. You're
Yes, sir.
understanding? This word has to be told. It is a reproducible pain which occurs in the muscle. Okay.
Yes, sir.
You're understanding? It can be reproduced. If you tell the patient to get the intermittent claudication, he walks and he gets the intermittent claudication.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So define more further the intermittent claudication.
Sir, it is a reproducible pain, catchy pain, which occurs due to exercise, due to accumulation of P substance and lactic acid and other metabolites in the muscles, leading to pain.
Okay.
Sir, so maybe
Sure.
there can be reduced blood supply to the muscles, sir. Atherosclerosis or any obstruction.
No. What is the differential diagnosis for intermittent claudication? Now you started actually. You told that nerve root compression,
Yes,
the joint pain, the arthritic inflammatories.
yes, sir.
How did you diagnose? How did you differentiate it from those? How did you know that it is intermittent claudication due to artery? How did you answer questions? You're understanding my question?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Yeah. See,
Yes, yes.
there are many other causes for intermittent claudication, similar pain which occurs. Okay. So
Yes, sir.
let's say the nerve root is usually radiates down in the leg. Okay,
Yes,
nerve
sir.
root compression, isn't it? So you can differentiate by the nerve root, or as you told you, the first step. What happens? Where do you get the pain in the when you keep the first step?
Sir, pain in the calf muscles. Sir.
No, in the intermittent claudication, the patient develops pain when he walks for a distance. It is
When he
not the
walks,
first step.
yes, sir. When he walks for a certain distance, he will get pain. Then when he takes rest, the pain is subsided.
Yes. So it is not the first step he gets pain. Okay. After he walks for some time,
Yes,
he
sir.
gets a pain.
So neurogenic pain usually will be very quickly originating, and immediately after immediately after stopping, it will disappear, sir.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So even can you tell something on what is venous claudication?
Sir, if there is a chronic inflammatory condition of the veins, like suppose iliac vein thrombosis, that will also
Yes.
lead to pressure changes.
Yes.
So that will
Yeah.
lead to.
So here usually the cause is a deep vein thrombosis, okay, which is the cause for the venous claudication. So here the whole leg is involved usually, not as classically compared to an arterial system where you get only in the calf. Okay, here the whole limb can be involved, and it is usually worsened in the thigh and the groin region. Usually it is like a busting type of pain. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so some of the you should always know how do you differentiate it, what questions you ask to differentiate from the other causes or the other differential diagnosis of intermittent claudication. Okay, we can continue.
He's a known diabetic since 10 years and is on oral hypoglycemic agents. His diabetic control is not known as he was not monitoring his blood glucose levels regularly. He's a known hypertensive.
Yeah, go on.
Sir, he is a known hypertensive since 10 years and he is on medication for the same. He is also a chronic smoker since 20 years and he smokes 1 packet of cigarette per day. There is no history of claudication pain in the right thigh, no history of claudication pain in the left lower limb and both upper limbs. No history of
usually the claudication pain occurs, intermittent claudication.
Sir, claudication pain can occur in the foot or leg or thigh or buttocks, sir.
Yes, it can occur in all these places. Where is it usually commonly occurs?
Sir, in the calf muscles.
It occurs in the calf muscles.
Calf muscles.
Any reason why?
Sir, because of femoropopliteal obstruction, sir.
Yes. The femoropopliteal obstruction is the most common. Okay. almost around 70%
70%.
of the cases. So that is the reason why the claudication always is sort of is described in the calf muscle, but
Yes, sir.
it need not be in the calf muscle. Based on the location of the obstruction, it can vary, even can
Yes.
occur even in the buttock also.
Yes, sir.
So what is this Lerich syndrome?
Sir, Lerich syndrome is if there is an obstruction in the aortoiliac level, there will be impotence because there will be reduced blood supply to the internal iliac artery.
Yes.
There will be distal, there will be reduced pulsation in the distal arteries
Yeah.
and impotence.
Yes, sexual impotence is one of a classical finding in this Lerich syndrome. Okay, so it is actually named after one French surgeon, Lerich.
Okay, sir.
I hope you can keep remember that also, if at all, just sort of
Okay,
curiosity. Okay, continue.
Sir, there is no history of abdominal pain. There's no history of chest pain. No history of dyspnea, cough. No history of dizziness or syncope. No history of blurring of vision, oliguria, or trauma.
Okay, so now why did you ask all these histories?
Sir, we'll ask for abdominal pain because we'll be suspecting abdominal angina.
Yes.
If we are suspecting angina pectoris, we'll ask about chest pain.
Yes.
Sir, and dyspnea and cough, that can be, sir, he is hypertensive also. So the hypertension can lead to congestive cardiac failure, which can lead to pulmonary edema or pleural
Okay.
effusion or
Okay.
something. So that can lead to dyspnea and cough, sir.
Okay, so basically you're trying to see all other peripheral arteries, which you are trying to see what has happened to the condition of the other arteries. You know,
Yes, sir.
you're not just limiting because it can be a systemic disease. So
Yes.
we are not concerned with just with the lower limb. Rather, we are trying to find out what is the condition of the all
Other
other
vessels.
vessels. That is the idea about asking all these questions regarding the ophthal and abdomen and also. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sir, and dizziness and syncope because of transient ischemic attack.
Fine.
To rule out transient ischemic attacks.
Okay, good. Next. Continue.
Sir, yes, sir. Past history. There's no similar complaints in the past. No history of asthma, tuberculosis, or epilepsy. There's no history of coronary artery disease in the past, and no history of any previous surgeries.
Okay. So anyway, the diabetic, you are told it in the presenting illness as it's directly related to the condition. So another tip to the students is most often the examiners expect that if the condition is related to the presenting illness, they expect it to be told in the presenting illness, not in the past history. Okay. Some students try to tell that I will tell it in the past history, but if it is related to the presenting illness, it has to be always told in the history of presenting illness. Many examiners will accept that. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. So family history. There's no similar complaints in the family. There's no history of diabetes mellitus or hypertension in the family, and there's no history of coronary artery disease in the family.
Okay.
That is pedigree charts.
Fine.
So personal history. Diet is mixed, appetite is normal, sleep is disturbed, bowel and bladder movements are regular and normal, and he has smoking history since 20 years.
Okay. Why is sleep disturbed?
Sir, because of pain, sir. Sometimes he will get pain.
Okay. Rest pain, you mean to say. He's having rest pain.
Yes, sir. Sir, and he has infection also, sir. Because there is a discharge, everything. So maybe pain, maybe because of
throbbing type of pain you mentioned, maybe because due to the pus. Okay, fine.
Yes, so, and he's smoking since 20 years. Back years is 25 years, and smoking index is 400.
Okay.
Treatment and drug history. The patient is taking tablet metformin 500 mg BD for diabetes, and tablet telmisartan 40 mg, and tablet hydrochlorothiazide 12.5 mg OD for hypertension.
Okay.
He's
one important point is that you should always ask usually patients if at all they're taking beta blockers. You know, sometimes even though beta blockers are given for hypertensive patients,
so they can aggravate the claudication pain.
Yeah, they tend to aggravate the claudication pain. So in the treatment registry, you should make sure that you mention that whether the patient is taking beta blockers or not.
So, and there's no history, and he's not having any allergy to any other drug.
Yeah, go back. Somebody asked me, I saw that why past history, somebody is asking why you're asking about TB. And you can say that as a completion history, you can even ask TB also. Maybe not related to this condition directly, but yeah, as a completion, you can ask all this past histories. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, continue.
Yes, sir. Summary. Here is a 55-year-old male patient who is a known diabetic, hypertensive, and a current smoker, coming from Nelamangala, belonging to upper middle class. He came with blackish discoloration of the right little toe since 5 days, associated with pain, fever, and foul-smelling discharge from the toe. He had intermittent claudication in the right leg since 1 year, with claudication distance of 100 meters since 1 month. He doesn't have ischemic features in the opposite limb, upper limbs, or any other organs. So I am thinking of peripheral arterial disease with acute infective gangrene.
Okay, now let us go back to his what is it? His socio-economic condition. You told that
So upper
what
middle
is
class.
his upper middle class? Can you tell me any relation to this socio-economic factors and to this peripheral vascular disease?
Sir, Berger's disease will usually be seen in low socioeconomic status people.
Okay. You can even talk, see, I'm trying to go back from his history about his age, about his socioeconomic factors, about his race, everything.
Yes,
Any relation to the peripheral vascular disease is what I'm trying to think.
Sir, if in middle-aged
yeah, low
men,
socioeconomic stress, yeah, fine, agreed that
sir, and 20 to 40 years, if it is middle-aged people, then Berger's disease is common, and in elderly people, atherosclerosis is common. Sir.
Yes. Okay. So what I want to try to highlight is that there is now trying to relate between the socioeconomic level and the vascular disease. Okay.
Yes,
There is, I mean, this is just an additional information. You can keep in mind that it's common in the low socioeconomic because they have found that the inflammatory factors, markers are more high in this low socioeconomic people. So they're not sure about the exact cause, but they noticed that. And even based on the race also, there is difference in the lipid profile of the white race and the other people. Okay.
So TAO and all are common in Jewish people.
Yes. So there is a lot of differences between the race. It is not common all through the world. So that thing should be kept in mind. Okay. And next is what is this about his occupation?
Sir, agriculture is sir.
Yeah. So any other related important point you want to mention about the relation between an occupation and the peripheral vascular disease? See, occupations which cause a lot of vibrations are associated with thrombosis in the arteries. That's a known condition. Not maybe lower limb, probably, if at all, let's assume he's using a machine which is causing vibration, he can have the brachial artery thrombosis. One of the things you can remember. So in the occupation is also quite important. Okay. Yeah, continue. So yeah, here just I want to say. So you told that you're thinking of acute infective gangrene. Okay. We'll come to discussion after finally, maybe after exam. Yeah, continue.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
So now, as far as summary, go back.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So summary, you have saw that he is quite having susceptible factors like diabetic, hypertensive, and smoker, and all these things, and is having classical intermittent claudication, which you made sure it is not due to other causes. So with all these things, yeah, you have now come to a conclusion that it is related to a peripheral arterial disease.
Yes,
okay. You can say not vascular, you can say peripheral arterial disease now. Okay.
Yes,
as you have mentioned here, you have written here, you can see that I am thinking of peripheral arterial disease with acute infective gangrene. That we will try to see when we examine. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Continue. Yeah.
Physical examination. Patient is a middle-aged male, moderately built and nourished. He is conscious, coherent, and cooperative, and is well oriented to time, place, and person. Consent is taken. Height is 165 centimeters. Weight is 72 kgs. and BMI is 26.44 kg per meter square. Pedal edema is present on the right side, which is of
Now, what
grade
is
1.
this BMI?
Sir,
What is this BMI?
sir, BMI, sir, 26.44, sir.
Yeah, see, you don't have to
Yes.
write BMI is kg per meter square. That is how you calculate. Okay, BMI is just 26. Yeah,
Okay, sir.
it
So
is.
little more than normal, sir.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to tell that. You have to say that the BMI is 26. That's all.
Okay, sir.
You don't tell
Okay,
26 kg per meter square. The kg per meter square is how you have calculated the BMI.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay. Mm.
Pedal edema is present on the right side, which is of grade 1. There is palpable and tender superficial inguinal lymph nodes on the right side, and there is no pallor, icterus, cyanosis, or clubbing.
Okay. See, go back.
Yes, sir.
This is a general examination. What you're trying to talk. Okay. Here
Yes,
we are
sir.
trying to find if there is generalized lymphadenopathy. Okay. So
Yes, sir.
here, when we come to talk about one limb which you're talking, and you can still say that there is no generalized lymphadenopathy. Okay.
Yes, sir.
About the regional lymph node, I can comment when I come to the regional examination, local examination.
Okay, sir.
You're understanding? So here the inguinal group is related sort of a extension of the regional examination. So it doesn't come in the general exam. Here we are trying to see if he's having generalized lymphadenopathy.
Yes, sir. Sir,
Okay.
but here if we tell that there is no lymphadenopathy, and then in local
No
examination,
generalized lymphadenopathy.
okay, sir.
Okay. No generalized lymphadenopathy can be told. You can tell about the regional lymph nodes. I will comment in the regional examination.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
The vitals are temperature is 100.2 degree Fahrenheit, which is measured in the axilla. Pulse is 104 beats per minute, felt in the right wrist, normal in rhythm, character, and volume, with
So
no
what is
vessel
core
wall thickness.
temperature?
Sir, rectal temperature.
Yeah, core temperature is rectal temperature, and it is usually more
Sir,
than
0.5 degrees more than
yeah.
the normal temperature.
Yeah. See, yeah, it is good that you're told that how you're measured, but you have to be ready with the answers. Okay. Fine.
Yes, sir.
Continue.
Respiratory rate is 20 cycles per minute, and blood pressure is 150 by 100 mmHg, which is measured in the right arm in supine position.
Okay.
Local examination. Patient is explained about the procedures and is examined in supine position under adequate light exposure. Both the lower limbs are completely exposed from the level of anterior superior iliac spine to the tips of the toes. On inspection, there is presence of gangrene in the right little toe, which is extending the whole toe is involved and extending proximally into the dorsum of the foot. It is black in color and it is a wet gangrene, and there is no line of demarcation. The line of demarcation is not clear. There is presence of yellowish, purulent, foul-smelling, scanty discharge from the ventral aspect of the right little toe.
Okay. Just as a revision, let it be some classic question again. What is line of demarcation?
So line of demarcation is the line which is which is separating the normal viable living tissue with the dead tissue. So,
Yes, very good. So usually it is very clearly seen in case of dry gangrene.
Dry gangrene. In case of wet gangrene, it is not so
It is
clear.
not so clear because.
So there will be spreading infection, and there can be edema and inflammation. Other
Edema and subcutaneous infection will be spreading much more beyond, so it is not very clear.
Yes.
Okay. Continue.
Yes, the surrounding skin up to the ankle shows features of inflammation like edema and erythema. The right leg below the knee shows signs of ischemia like thinning of skin, loss of hair.
Just one moment. Somebody is asking that is it a dry gangrene? Can you go back to the slide? Go the previous slide, please.
Yes, sir.
See here, as you can,
presence of pus. Sir.
Yes, there is presence of pus, and even the cellulitis is all seen in the whole limb. Usually, dry gangrene will be sort of very shriveled. Okay, when there is a supra added infection, it becomes a wet gangrene. Okay, So here, as you can see, more since the presence of the pus and cellulitis and all is present, so we'll try to put it more in terms of wet gangrene. Yeah,
Yes.
next. Dry gangrene is mummified looking type. Okay,
Yes, sir.
no fluid coming out. You can remember something like that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I'll continue, sir.
Yeah, continue.
The surrounding skin up to the ankle shows features of inflammation like edema and erythema. The right leg below the knee shows signs of ischemia like thinning of skin, loss of hair, subcutaneous fat, and shininess. The nails show transverse ridges and are brittle. Berger's postural test was done and it was positive. That is, the right leg became pale and the veins became emptied and guttered.
Now, can you describe how you did this Berger's postural test?
Sir, first we'll we'll explain the procedure and we'll take the consent of the patient. The patient is made to lie in supine position and he's asked to lift his leg alternately up to 90 degrees, sir. And wherever when the leg is elevated, the leg will become pale. If there is ischemia, the leg will become pale and the veins will become emptied and guttered. But if in a normal limb, there will be no signs of any paleness or
Yeah. This one thing is practically it's little difficult to lift the limb to 90 degree. I understand this. But the students should understand that even if the idea is that even if the normal limb is lifted up to 90 degree also, there is the pink remains. There is no discoloration, no changes. It remains pink. So in an abnormal, like a patient where there is an ischemia, so at one angle it starts, the color pale starts. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, and the patient can even develop pain also.
Yes, sir.
So Berger's angle, you're told. Any Berger's sign,
Berger's sign, sir.
Okay, so it's even described about a Berger's sign. It's also called as dependent rubor. Okay, so the
Yes.
word you can understand by the term only, the dependent rubor. Rubor is redness.
Redness.
So when the foot is put down, okay, when his foot is allowed to hang down, there is the arterial bed is usually dilated in these patients where is this ischemia. The body is trying to take as much blood as possible. So when the foot is dangled down, the distal to the obstruction, there is little dilatation of the arterial bed. So this causes the redness to appear. Okay, and when the extremity is elevated, the pressure drops and then the foot becomes pale. So this dependent rubor is called as Berger's sign.
Yes,
Okay?
sir.
So Berger's angle is what you described the test which you did. Berger's sign is what you can notice, that is the dependent rubor.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Sir, is that and capillary filling time same, sir?
No, here the whole limb can be, here we're just trying to see capillary is just seeing at one tip, Here the whole limb becomes dilated, the foot becomes red, the whole foot becomes
Sir, but
red.
the procedure was similar, no, sir? Like we'll ask the patient to lift the leg when the pallor appears, then we'll ask the patient to come in sitting posture.
Yeah, see, capillary filling is when even you can apply pressure on the foot toes and
Yes,
even
sir.
leave that, and you can see even the filling time, capillary filling,
Yes,
how
sir.
long it takes to fill. But
Yes,
here you don't press or observe anything, you just allow the foot to be dangled down. That's all. Automatically the limb becomes more reddish.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, the capillary filling time was 10 seconds and venous refilling was 15 seconds.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So they're delayed. You should tell that.
Yes, sir. There was delay in both capillary filling and venous.
So you observe that there is delay. So the important point. Okay.
Yes, sir. The thigh of the affected limb appears normal. The left lower limb appears normal. There's no scars or sinuses. There's no engorged veins and no visible pulsations.
Okay. Where were you observing for these visible pulsations?
Sir, along the course of artery, sir, if there was any aneurysm, there could be a pulsation.
Yeah, very unlikely. I will not accept this sentence. We better to avoid such controversial statement. Better to avoid say no visible
Okay,
pulsations.
Okay.
Okay. Unwantedly, they will start asking you about aneurysms. It's not needed. Will not divert from the topic.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
On palpation, the right little toe is cold. Foot up to the ankle is warm due to inflammation. There is no local rise of temperature above
See,
the ankle.
when you present, right, in the exam, let's assume you're presenting the second point, foot up to the ankle is warm. You don't have to tell due to inflammation. Okay, here you put it. I understand here this is the PPT for all the students, but when you present in an exam, all you are trying to tell is you have to just tell what is your finding. That's all.
Okay, sir.
The examiner will ask you why is there warmth. So then you can explain probably due to inflammation. Okay, so when you present, try to just make sure that you're just trying to put it across. What are the findings you saw? So you saw that the foot up to the ankle is warm. That's all. So the examiner will ask you a question, why is it warm? This is how the exam should go on. He should ask you why, then you will explain probably due to inflammation. Don't try to put it things like foot up to the ankle is warm due to inflammation. You don't put your own fact and don't try to justify with an answer why is it. You don't have to do it. The examiner will ask you if needed. Otherwise, you can continue. It's just findings you're trying to see. Palpation. What are the findings you saw?
Okay, sir.
Yeah, I think this should be, many students should catch this point that you don't try to assume that the examiner wants even you to tell why, and you're trying to go on explaining into the. When it comes to the examination, you have to just tell what you saw or what you demonstrated rather than telling why or justifying or explaining. Don't do that. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
The foot up to the ankle is warm. There is no local rise of temperature above the ankle of the affected limb and over the entire left limb.
So the above the ankle, it is normal.
Normal, sir. No local rise of temperature.
Normal temperature you felt.
Yes, sir.
Below the ankle you felt that it is warm, and above the ankle you feel it is normal.
Yes,
so
sir.
I believe this is all compared to the other limb.
Yes, sir. Yeah, sir.
Okay.
Capillary refilling time was 4 seconds and venous refilling was poor. So these two also indicate that there is delayed
Okay.
filling, sir. So cross leg test, oscillatory movements are present.
Yeah. Now see, this is what you should tell. The cross leg test, you tell that oscillatory movement are present. So the next question would be, I would expect you, can you tell me how did you do this test?
Okay, sir. Sir, again here we will take the patient's consent. We'll ask the patient to to cross his legs and put one leg over the other, so as to so that the knee of one leg will be touching the popliteal fossa of the other leg. Then here we'll distract the patient by taking history, and after a few minutes, so basically this test is done to see the patency of popliteal artery. If the popliteal artery is patent, then the pulsations are transmitted in the form of oscillatory movements.
Okay. So when a test is asked to describe, you can tell usually one of a good way will be to tell what is the principal idea behind that test. So first thing you should tell here is the idea to see whether the popliteal artery is present or not. Okay. So then you will tell how you did the test. Okay, fine.
Yes,
I hope all others have understood this. Very quite a simple test, but quite useful. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Continue.
On palpation of the gangrenous area, it was noticed that the distal part of the toe is hard and shriveled, and the proximal part of the toe and dorsum of the foot is edematous. There is no crepitus. The limb above the gangrenous area was also examined, and it was noticed that there was pitting edema and local rise of temperature and tenderness, which was present up to the ankle, but those features were absent above the ankle. Thrill is absent along the arteries.
Yeah. So here the same somebody was asked previously about the dry gangrene. As you can see that the tip is probably hard and shriveled, but as you come proximal, you can see that there is edema present. Okay, that means it is superadded infection is present. So it is already it is a wet gangrene as such now. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So what exactly is gangrene?
Sir, gangrene is a macroscopic loss of tissue with superadded putrefaction.
Macroscopic death of tissue. That's all. So what is microscopic death?
So necrosis.
necrosis. This is one very thing which many students, when they come to the exam hall, get confused about this gangrene and necrosis. Please remember this very simple. This is macroscopic and that is microscopic death. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So why is it usually black?
Sir, initially there will be ischemia to the part of the limb or part of the organ. So reduced oxygen will be, so the oxygen content in the tissue will be less, sir. So
Okay.
because of that, first it will become pale, and then there will be reduced hemoglobin only, which will be supplied to
Yeah.
the part.
See,
So
it
it
is-
becomes.
See, it is simple. You should tell that it is due to breakdown of the hemoglobin. There is deposition of the iron sulfide. Okay.
Sir.
So this iron sulfide is blackish in color. Okay. And when can you tell me how does this dry gangrene occur and how does this wet gangrene occur?
Sir, dry gangrene is usually following any arterial occlusion or arterial obstruction. So initially the part of the limb will become pale, then bluish, and then blackish in color. But whereas in wet gangrene, it will be because of both arterial and venous obstructions. There will be
No,
pooling of blood, which can also become infected and that can spread.
Okay,
Sir,
see, the dry gangrene usually occurs when there is gradual slowing of the bloodstream. Okay,
yes, sir.
and classically it is due to the atheromatous occlusions.
Yes, sir.
And wet gangrene is when there is superadded infection and putrefaction is present. If there
So
is gas forming organisms, we'll
So
have
gas gangrene.
crepitus. It will have crepitus,
Crepitus, yes, sir.
gas gangrene. Okay, so there
Sir,
are
and
only
line of demarcation will be more clearer in dry gangrene when compared to wet gangrene.
yeah. So in dry gangrene, it is very clearly you can make out. In wet gangrene, you can't make out. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So in relation to the bone and the soft tissue,
Sir,
which is
so in wet gangrene, the bones can be involved. More chances of bones getting involved. In dry gangrene, there are less chances.
okay. So see, understand that the bone has got better blood supply compared to the tissue. So that tends to go at later stage. Okay. Yeah. Continue.
Next slide, sir. Palpation of blood vessels. On palpation of all the peripheral pulses, it was noticed that on the right side, the dorsalis pedis artery, anterior tibial and posterior tibial pulsations were feeble, whereas on the left side, it was slightly reduced. And popliteal and femoral pulsations were slightly reduced on both the right and left side. Other peripheral pulsations were normal.
Okay, see, I will here again, I would like to advise to all the students that please practice how to examine every blood vessel. Okay, don't try to assume that it is quite easy. I would advise that you try to examine blood vessels of normal individuals. Go even, let's assume there's a pain abdomen case, but you try, if at all the patient is cooperative, do try to examine the dorsalis pedis, do try to examine the anterior tibial, the posterior tibial. It will make you a habit to catch up when it is absent. It's very difficult. Many of the times, our own pulsations, we tend to assume that there is pulsations present. So it's quite common to do mistake about these fine vessels. So unless you have examined the normal and you know exactly where to keep your finger, and if I think it will be better if you can just tell few things about where will you palpate, dorsalis pedis, anteritibial, and popliteal femoral. It's better to tell.
Sir, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, dorsalis pedis artery is felt when we place our hands lateral to the extensor hallucis longus tendon, and it is felt against the navicular bone and medial cuneiform bone.
Okay.
Sir, anterior tibial artery is felt when we keep our hand in midway between medial and lateral malleolus, lateral to the extensor hallucis longus tendon, and it is felt against the lower end of tibia.
Okay.
Sir, posterior tibial pulsation, we should keep the hand behind the medial malleolus, between the medial malleolus and tendoachilles, in between those two places, which it is also against the calcaneum, sir.
Okay.
Popliteal pulsation. So there are two methods to see popliteal pulsation. One is in supine position, one is in prone position. The better one is in prone position. In supine position, we'll ask the patient to flex the knee joint, and we'll keep our fingers behind in the popliteal fossa and move it horizontally to feel the pulsation.
Mhm.
And that popliteal artery pulsation will be against the upper end of tibia. And in prone position, we'll passively flex the leg to around 45 degree, and so as to relax the popliteal fascia. And then we'll place our hand in the lower, inferior angle of popliteal fossa, and the popliteal artery pulsation will be felt against the upper end of tibia.
Okay. Here, what I would like to say is students can just log on to some videos of how to examine the peripheral vessels. It will be good because it's difficult to understand when you're talking, or you can better to practice it on a patient and make sure that you know exactly how to examine these vessels. Very important. And it has happened that whenever we go as examiners, this is one place where we catch students because most of them get biased by seeing the Doppler report, okay, and they try to put their clinical findings. So when we ask them to show how to examine a vessel, they struggle. So I request students, don't get caught in this problem. Make sure that you know how to examine, you have practiced, okay, and then you better to examine it even in the exam and try to tell. There can be little difference between the Doppler and even the clinical findings, okay.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
assume sometimes it's Doppler says it's present, but you're not able to feel. So better make sure, tell what exactly you have examined and know how to examine, okay.
Yes, sir.
Can dorsalis pedis be absent in a
Yes,
normal individual?
sir, in 10% of the people, it will be absent, sir.
Yeah, maybe 8. Yeah, some people quote even 10%. So it can be absent also. So doesn't make that immediately you keep a finger and you say that dorsalis pedis is absent, so it's peripheral vascular disease. Don't try to jump to conclusions. It can be absent in some cases of normal individuals.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in a patient of shock, just out of a related question, if in a patient with a shock, if you feel dorsalis pedis, what is the approximate systolic pressure?
Sir, it will be sir, very less, sir. It will be less than 10.
No, man. Only if a systolic pressure is around 90 is the dorsalis pedis felt. It need not be perfect, but yeah, approximately the systolic pressure is around 90 mmHg, the dorsalis pedis is felt. So a patient is in shock. If you're not able to feel his arterial, just keep, you can do this. If you feel his dorsalis pedis, okay, his systolic is approximately 90. Just
Yes, sir.
since we are talking about dorsalis pedis, I just thought I'll tell you. Yeah,
Okay, sir.
continue.
Yes, sir. Sir, sir, on palpation, continuing palpation.
Yeah, go back.
Yes,
Yeah, see, carotid is fine. Try to avoid. Most often people struggle to examine brachial and subclavian, you know, because we tend not to do whenever there is a PAD case in our ward. It is usually lower limb and we tend to miss this. So if you are sure, you can mention this. Otherwise, better tell that you have not appreciated, or can just skip it. That will be better than trying to cook up something.
okay, sir.
Okay, yeah, continue.
So next slide, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Continuing palpation. On neurologic examination, there was presence of paresthesia in the hind foot, and the forefoot was anesthetic. There were normal sensations in the leg and thigh. On lymph node exam.
No, this is a quite important examination because this patient you told is a diabetic patient.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So how do you want to say whether what has happened to his sensation?
Sir, diabetic neuropathy would have occurred, sir. So that is why he'll be having anesthesia in the forefoot, loss of sensation.
Okay. So you should very carefully examine about his sensation in this any diabetic patients. Okay.
Yes.
So either it can be in the diabetic patients, they can have this neuropathic ulcers or this neuroischemic ulcers, what we call. Okay.
Okay,
So you have to examine the sensation very carefully in a diabetic patient.
yes,
Okay. Yeah. One thing. Yeah. One more thing. One very important question. I think many of the PGs also will find it neglect this thing. What is diabetic foot?
Sir, diabetic foot is sir, it is a condition which usually occurs in diabetics. The foot there will be diabetic neuropathy, diabetic microangiopathy, and diabetic atherosclerosis,
Okay.
so which will lead to which will make the patient prone for infections, repeated trauma and infection.
No, what exactly is diabetic foot? How when you will term diabetic foot? When you call it is diabetic foot? See, diabetic foot, is it just like one feature which you're trying to tell that it is present or absent? Is it something like that? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No, are you understanding this question? It is a multiple conditions which coexist in a diabetic patients. You know,
Yes,
there
sir.
can be an abscess, there can be an amputation of it, which is already somebody has done.
Yes.
There is a gangrene of one toe. All this together is called, usually people use the term called as diabetic foot. Okay, it is not just one finding that you tell diabetic foot.
Yes,
You're
sir.
understanding, because the
Yes, sir. Yes,
diabetic
sir.
for patient, the foot of a diabetic patient undergoes multiple injuries,
Yes.
as you told, due to what all neuropathy, angiopathy, and all those things. There can be a
Yes.
variety of things which can happen to keep happening to the foot.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when there are multiple findings, you better call it all together. We can't keep telling one or two or things. So we all put it together and tell it as a diabetic foot.
Diabetic foot. Yes, sir.
Okay, so
Yes,
when you tell diabetic foot, I can imagine that it can be whether there's a toe is missing, whether there's an abscess present, whether there's some cellulitis present, all together, you know, is a diabetic foot.
Yes,
Okay, what is Charcot's foot?
sir, I don't know, sir.
Yeah, when there is here, as I told you, there's autonomic, motor, and the sensory nerves are all involved, isn't it? So
Yes,
the
sir.
skin becomes quite dry and foot is most often deformed, as I told you.
Yes, sir.
So this foot is called as Charcot's foot. Okay.
Sir.
Yeah, continue. We'll not get distracted.
Okay, sir. On lymph node examination, the superficial group of inguinal lymph nodes on the right side are palpable, firm, and tender, and they are of the size 3 into 2 centimeters. Calf
Okay.
muscle measurement.
So you think it is related to the infection?
Yes, sir. The spreading of infections.
Yeah. So did you examine even the popliteal?
Sir, that was not palpable, sir.
Okay. Superficial group, which one? Vertical or horizontal group?
Sir, vertical, sir.
Yeah. So remember, as the leg is vertical group. Okay. The
Yes, sir.
horizontal is the groin area, it drains. So vertical is the limb. So easy to remember. So you said when you say it is superficial group of vertical group of inguinal nodes, quite enlarged and quite big, around 3 into 2 centimeters. So probably due to the infection which is present. If it is
Yes,
quite small, let's assume around 1 into 1 centimeter, it can be due to even the barefoot walking. Okay.
Sir, I couldn't hear, sir.
If the size is small and it's non-tender, just a small lymph node around 1 into 1 centimeter, let's assume there's a existing lymph node in inguinal, it could be due to barefoot walking, which is common in India.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
We walk with barefoot, isn't it? So
Yes,
multiple injuries, small infections, so it's a long-standing chronic, slowly they usually tend to have a small lymph node in the inguinal region. It's normal.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah.
So the calf muscle measurements were 25 centimeters on the right side and 28 centimeters on the left side.
Okay.
On auscultation, no bruise heard over the major arteries. The blood pressure on the right arm was 150 by 100 mmHg, and on the left arm it was 146 by 98 mmHg. Reactive hyperemia test was done, and it was 6 seconds.
Okay.
So the systemic examination, cardiovascular system, S1 and S2 is heard, no murmurs are heard, and there is no additional sounds heard. In respiratory system, normal vesicular breath sounds were heard, and there was equal bilateral air entry with no added sounds. Per abdomen examination, soft, no tenderness elicited, no mass felt, and no organomegaly, and bowel sounds were heard. Central nervous system examination, there was no abnormality detected.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir. So shall I continue?
Yeah, continue.
So summary, here is a 55-year-old male patient who is a known diabetic, hypertensive, and current smoker. He has come with symptoms of blackish discoloration, foul-smelling discharge from the right little toe, with pain and fever. On examination, he is febrile and his blood pressure is high.
Okay.
On local examination, he has wet gangrene in the right little toe, which is spreading towards the ankle. Features of ischemia in the right leg, foot, and toenails are seen. Capillary refilling and venous refilling are delayed. Pulsations of femoral popliteal arteries are normal. However, the pulsations of dorsalis pedis, anterior tibial and posterior tibial arteries are weak and feeble. Berger's
Okay.
test is positive and
Mhm.
Berger's angle is 60 degrees. There is wasting of calf muscle on the right side. He has paresthesia in the hind foot and anesthesia in the forefoot. And the superficial inguinal group of lymph nodes are palpable and tender. So my provisional diagnosis is that this is a case of a peripheral arterial occlusive disease manifesting as diabetic gangrene in the right little toe, spreading up to the ankle with tibial artery stenosis, probably due to atherosclerosis.
Okay. So you're telling this is a case of peripheral artery. Okay. Here you can put a word that it is a chronic peripheral vascular disease. Okay. That also you can. It's a chronic, isn't it? It's been for almost a year.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Manifesting as diabetic gangrene in the right toe, spreading to ankle with up to the ankle with tibial artery stenosis. Why do you want to say it is a tibial artery stenosis? Because
Sir, because only up till the ankle, most of the features, most of the signs were present, and therefore maybe tibial arteries would have been blocked, sir, which is leading to the symptoms. Because rest of the leg was normal.
okay. See, one thing is that the tibial occlusive disease is common in patients with diabetes. Okay, there's something called as tibial occlusive disease. Okay,
Yes, sir.
and even with age is also quite common, and even with renal disease also it is common. Tibial occlusive disease, one. And you're telling due to atherosclerosis. I just want to know, atherosclerosis is bilateral or unilateral?
Sir, sir, it will usually be, sir, it can be bilateral or unilateral also, sir.
Okay.
Sir, it's a chronic inflammatory process
Yes.
of the vessel, sir. It begins in childhood only.
Yes. Yeah,
Sir,
that's a good thing. Yeah, at least you know that it is not doesn't happen after age. Yeah, now it is proved that the day you're born it starts. Okay.
sir, it usually affects the elastic and muscular arteries,
Okay.
and it starts as a fibrous plaque, sir. So
Okay.
fatty streak.
Okay. What is this arteriosclerosis and atherosclerosis? Both are same?
So no, sir. Sir,
Okay.
atherosclerosis.
Yeah, atherosclerosis due to plaque, as you told. Okay, is due to hardening of an artery, is specifically caused by a plaque.
Yes, sir.
Okay, whereas arteriosclerosis, where there is hardening of the arteries, maybe due to many other causes, but not just specifically due to the plaque. If it is due to a plaque, it is called as atherosclerosis. Okay,
Yes, sir.
and it is a systemic disease. Understand that it is a systemic disease. Probably on this side, it is more. It doesn't mean that it's not present on the other side or it's not present in elsewhere. It will
Yes,
be
sir.
present. Probably it's not yet block step.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, so it is not a unilateral condition. It is a systemic disease,
Yes, sir.
probably now seriously affecting this side.
Okay, sir.
Okay, yeah. So you should remember that it's not just one side it is happening.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, something I thought I will tell you since we spoke about this blockage. Anybody knows what is Poiseuille's law?
Sir, no, sir.
Any idea what it is? A law which tend to was described to know the relation between the pressure and the volume of the blood flow and the arterial length and the radius. Okay, you can check
Yes,
out
sir.
sometimes Poiseuille's law, that is Poiseuille. Okay, Poiseuille's law. You can just read out of curiosity. You can understand the physiology, what happens in that. So here, what happens? What I wanted to tell is when there is a plaque. Okay, once a plaque is there, doesn't mean that the artery doesn't try to adapt. That artery tries to enlarge itself in the beginning, but when the maximum enlargement is attained, this sort of compensation is gone, then the block starts happening. Okay, so this is a good thing. Why suddenly it occurs, and things like, even though atherosclerosis is mild present, why the block does not happen, what is the difference between the relation between the pressure and the flow, all this can be understood when you know this law. So just it usually won't be asked in your exam, neither in your theory we expect this, but just out of curiosity, you can try to understand the physiology with this law. Okay? Yeah, continue.
Yes, sir. So next, management, sir.
Okay.
Sir, in management, first I would like to do investigations. In investigations, blood investigations like CBC, RFT, LFT.
In the next
and,
slide, you can go.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir. So investigations, first blood investigations in that CBC, RFT, LFT. And since he is diabetic, I would like to do blood sugar estimation also. So FBS, RBS, PPBS, and HbA1c levels.
Yeah, HbA1c is very important. You have to make sure seeing that. Yes.
And sir, since he's hypertensive and smoking everything, I would like to think of atherosclerosis also. So we'll see a lipid profile. Serum beta lipoproteins, triglycerides, and cholesterol levels, blood urea, serum creatinine, serum electrolytes. Sir, and since there is discharge, we'll collect the discharge and send it for culture and sensitivity.
Okay.
And routine urine examination and microscopic examinations also done, sir. So basically, urine examination for to check the sugars, presence of sugars or ketone bodies, since he is diabetic.
Okay.
Sir, and other investigations like pocket Doppler, X-ray, duplex ultrasound.
Yeah. Good that you mentioned something called as the pocket Doppler. It's a handheld Doppler which is used. It is very useful. If some PGs are hearing this discussion, I think I would recommend that you try to get an access to this Doppler and try to see. And because most often we'll be talking about this ABI, that is ankle brachial index. Okay, so when we are talking about that, it is better that you try it once and make sure that how you measure and all. Can you tell something on this? What is this? You are not measured, I assume, since no access to the Doppler. We'll just discuss few points on that. So what exactly is this ankle brachial index?
Sir, ankle brachial pressure index is, sir, it is an index. Here it is a ratio of ankle blood pressure to brachial blood pressure. So usually ankle blood pressure will be around 5 or 15, 5 to 15 mmHg more than the brachial blood pressure. So the index always will be more than 1. So even if it is up to 0.9, it is considered as normal. But less than 0.9, there will be presence of ischemia. From 0.7 to 0.89, there will be mild ischemia. From 0.5 to 0.69, there will be moderate ischemia, and 0.3 to 0.49 will be severe ischemia. And less than 0.3 will be critical ischemic limb.
Okay, so okay, you told ankle brachial index, agreed with all the values and all. But can you tell something more on what is this critical limb ischemia?
Sir, critical limb ischemia is usually a severe type of ischemia. Sir, basically it will be manifesting as rest pain. Sir, in that, so normally the ankle pressure will be around 50 to 60 mmHg, but if it is less than 40, it will indicate ischemia, and if it is less than 10, that time we can say it as a critical limb ischemia.
Okay, see, this critical limb ischemia is a very complicated topic. Okay, if you try to read on that, it's quite a vast topic in itself. But if somebody asks you a simple question like, "What can you tell what critical limb ischemia?" You can just tell where there is presence of rest pain, usually more than 2 weeks, Okay,
sir.
along with tissue loss like the ulcer or gangrene.
Yes,
Okay,
sir. Sir, and he'll be
and
taking analgesics for more than 2 weeks.
yes, more than 2 weeks, as I told you, for the rest pain, and along with the low ankle pressure, as you are telling, low ankle or the toe pressures.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is a rough idea to know that it's a very bad limb. Okay, a critical limb itself is a big discussion. I don't know if you have gone through. If some PGs are there, they just can go through. Many of the article studies are there. There's a lot of discussion about this critical limb ischemia. So better if you are discussing about this, it's for a PG level. Since Kishan told that some PGs are joining, I would recommend all to the PGs. So please try to understand what is critical limb ischemia. It's a very important discussion. Okay. Can you just, we forgot one thing actually. Can you tell the Fontaine classification?
Sir, Fontaine classification is for limb ischemia, sir. There will be basically stages 1, 2A, 2B, 3 and 4. One is asymptomatic. 2 indicates intermittent claudication. In that 2A will be that he will get intermittent claudication pain after walking for more than 200 meters. And 2B will be for less than 200 meters. 3 will
Severe
be
claudication.
severe claudication, rest pain, and 4 will be ulceration and gangrene.
Okay, even 4 also is described as 4A and B, minor tissue loss and major tissue loss also.
Okay, sir.
Okay, there is another classification also. I think many PGs will know. There's something called as Rutherford classification.
Yes, sir. Rutherford classification. Sir.
Yeah,
Sir,
so
that will have a 0 to 6 grades, sir.
Yeah. Okay,
0,
now we'll not
1,
go into
2,
that. Rutherford classification. Fontaine is one classically described classification. Okay,
Yes.
but there is a lot of argument not to accept these classifications because they say this is in 1950s somewhere where Fontaine had described this classically. Okay,
Yes,
this era where there was not much of diabetic patients. So now they doesn't take into consideration many factors. So it's all gone. Many people won't accept this Fontaine classification. So there is something called as a Wi-Fi system which is used for foot. Okay, you can remember, quite easy to remember Wi-Fi, isn't it? So it is W is for wound grade, I is for ischemia grades, and FI is for foot infection grades. Okay, so each one has got its own grades. That is, wound has got separate grades, ischemia has got, I will not go into details. Just remember there's something called as a Wi-Fi system which is used because it takes in consideration many other factors in this era of this, and there's a lot of diabetic patients. Okay,
yes, sir.
Any idea what is this PDIS classification?
Sir,
Just you need not know. If you don't know, it's fine. I can tell. It is also for a diabetic wound. They use this like perfusion and extent and infection and sensation and all. Okay, PDIS classification is also used. But what I wanted to highlight is that you should classically know Fontaine classification. What is exactly this? What are the stages and so on? But it is not complete. It is not completely dependable. So there are other classifications which are used. That is another new system is called the Wi-Fi system, which is used. So just know this. That's all. Maybe it's helping even the PGs who are hearing this. So with this, we'll continue further. Okay.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So, sir, pocket Doppler will be done. Duplex ultrasound and arteriography also.
Okay. So what exactly are you trying to see by this Doppler and the duplex?
Sir, we'll get to know the. Sir, we'll be able to locate the lesion, sir, wherever there is a site of obstruction. That is the site, extent, and severity of obstruction.
Yes. So site we will know, then the degree of how much it is affected, and the length we need to know.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, and we'll get to know the diameter. So we'll see the diameter. We can see blood flow. So blood pressure also we can measure.
Okay. Fastly, can we just tell what exactly is Doppler?
Sir, in Doppler, actually there will be a Doppler probe which will be placed on the artery, which is to be examined, and then the Doppler will send in the Doppler waves, ultrasound waves that will pass through the wall of the artery and hit on the RBCs, and then the waves will be reflected back from the RBCs of the blood, So
Okay.
then there will be difference in the frequency of transmitted and reflected waves, which will be then taken up back by the device, and it will be augmented into sound impulses, which we'll be able to hear.
Okay, good. No, I will, and that's good enough. I think as a basic idea is what exactly this Doppler is, that we send a waves, it's reflected back, and we receive that. Okay. Usually, the Doppler is usually we see a triphasic flow in a
Yes, a
normal.
triphasic flow. So we'll
Yeah.
see first sound,
Again, I
second
will
sound.
not go into what is this first, second, third sound. We are already almost 6:15, so we'll not go into that also.
Yes, sir.
Next is the duplex. What is this duplex?
So duplex is a Doppler along with B wave ultrasound.
B wave, it is a B mode ultrasound. Okay.
Oh, sir, B
B
mode.
mode is brightness. There's a lot of things about the pixels and so on. You don't have to break your head. Here, we tend to examine even the anatomy and the flow simultaneously.
Yes,
Okay. So the
Yes, sir.
duplex is a little more added advantage over the Doppler.
Okay, sir.
But most often Doppler is more than sufficient. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
sir. So next we'll do arteriography. That is
Mhm.
retrograde percutaneous catheterization using Seldenger's technique.
Okay. Next.
So this is the MR angiogram of the right lower limb, sir, showing
Okay.
the
This.
completely lateral and its branches.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Continue.
Sir, X-ray. I would like to do chest X-ray, posterior anterior view, and X-ray of the right foot, AP and oblique view.
Okay.
So other investigations are isotope technique, electromagnetic flow meter, plethysmography, and oscillometry.
See, for the discussion wise, this is fine. What are the other options which are available? But whenever you're presenting a case, remember that you're talking to in relation to that patient who is in front of you, or here, what are that XYZ patient which you're talking, okay? Related to this
Yes, sir.
patient, what are the investigation we'll try to do? And try to be very practical, which are possible. Like if I write a plethysmography, I doubt whether you'll get a plethysmography done in anywhere else. Maybe very, very few center, but most it is absolute. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So
So
don't try
routinely
to,
done investigations are
yes, it is.
angiogram.
I will tell, please stick on to Doppler. You come up to duplex. If at all you say these are the non-invasive tests which I'll do first, okay, along with X-ray and so on. Then you come to the invasive test where you will come for the angiogram.
Angiogram.
Okay. Don't try to get into the point of this telling this isotope and plethysmography and all. You know, the moment you tell this, they think that it is more you're trying to have a theoretical discussion than a practical. They will say that the examiners will start telling, please tell to this patient. Then they will start pulling you, telling, oh, is it, where do they do the plethysmography and so on. Please don't get into this trap. Don't mention it at all. If at all they ask you, apart from the patient, as a general discussion, if they ask you, can you tell some other investigations which are available? Yeah, I can mention this. Otherwise,
Okay, sir.
don't get into this. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
sir.
continue.
So next we'll so there will be
So
definitive
you should
diagnosis.
told about the angiogram here. Actually, angiography should have been mentioned. It's a very important test and routinely done. You've
Yes,
done an MR angiography, isn't it?
Angiogram, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
So the definitive diagnosis is that this is a case of diabetic gangrene with spreading cellulitis.
Mhm.
Differential diagnosis, embolic gangrene or Burgess disease.
Okay. Do you want to still tell Burgess disease here?
So no, sir, because Burgess disease usually it will not be in a patient who is having who is a diabetic or a hypertensive, and it will usually be in younger people.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Okay. Continue.
So then treatment, sir.
Mhm.
So for treatment, we do general treatment and then medical and surgical treatment. In general treatment, we'll tell the patient to stop smoking, and then we'll give advice about the diet, and we'll tell him to do regular exercise and take care of the limb. We'll ask the patient to control diabetes and hypertension. And then in medical management, we can give analgesics, antipyretics, and anti-inflammatory drugs to take care of the pain and inflammation. And initially, before the culture and sensitivity reports come, I would like to start with I would like to start him on broad spectrum antibiotics to cover all possible areas: gram positive, gram negative, and anaerobic organisms. For gram
Yes.
positive, injection penicillin and tazobactam 4.5 grams in 100 ml normal saline, which is given as a slow IV infusion for 20 minutes. And that is given thrice in a day.
Okay. Anyway, we'll skip that. I hope the overall message is that you'll try to cover broad spectrum, as you told,
Yes, sir.
and
Broad
we'll
spectrum
have
antibiotics.
gram positive, negative, and the anaerobic
Anaerobes.
coverage has to be started.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Continue
And
next.
once the culture and sensitivity reports are available,
Yeah, based
we'll
on
give him
that.
one
Yeah,
specific.
Yeah.
Sir, and other drugs which can be given to the patient are antiplatelets and anti-lipids, anti-lipid drugs.
The
So
clopidogrel,
they
yeah,
are
fine.
clopidogrel, aspirin, and atorvastatin.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Aspirin is for lifelong, actually. I hope it is understood here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, and in diet, we'll tell him to take carbohydrate and lipid-free diet. And
See,
we'll
here
give
you can put it all these three things, that is the control of diabetes, cessation, all into lifestyle modification. These are to control the modifiable factors. Okay,
sir.
there are some
Risk
unmodifiable
factor
factors.
modification.
Yeah, risk factor, the modifiable factors which you are trying to control. Okay, and the most important you have to really highlight is the cessation of the smoking, that is stopping the smoking. It is a single most cause for PVD. Okay, this increases by tenfold. It is a dose related effect. I hope you know that. I think even you mentioned about the packets and all. I think students should remember that it's a dose related
So
effect.
more than 300
Yeah.
in smoking index will be a high risk factor,
Yeah.
and more than 40 pack years will be a high risk factor.
Yeah, one important message is that even the passive smoking is also shown to cause a initiation of atherosclerosis in non-smokers. I hope this will scare non-smokers. It is proved that even the passive smoking is also a risk factor nowadays. So it will initiate. So here cessation, and it causes a lot of reversible changes can occur. Here, no, I'm not talking about the gangrene toe, but as such, the claudication, pain, and all will disappear when the patient stops smoking. It's a very important point to be mentioned, and you have to highlight it very much. Okay, rather here, what you could have done is you should have told the lifestyle modification above the medical line of treatment. Okay, so let's assume this patient is there. First, I will tell him, first you stop smoking. Okay, this is how I will tell. The lifestyle modification will be told to him first, and then I'll come to the medical line of management. Could be put across. Fine, I'll accept this also, not a problem. You put all under a medical thing, but better to put it that as a first, and then you can put the medical line of down. Okay. Yeah.
Sir, what I thought was he came with pain and
I understood. I understood why you put what you're trying to do in the hospital. But it is so important about stopping the smoking. It's highly important. So in that way, you have to highlight that. Because see, the examiner is waiting. The examiner is eagerly waiting for you to tell stop smoking. I'm trying to tell you what from the other side of the table. So the moment you're telling stop smoking, the examiner is very happy. Then you're going on with the other medical line of management. I'm happy. Lifestyle modification is very important. Okay. Yeah. Continue.
Yes, sir. Sir, yeah, lifestyle modification. We'll tell him to stop smoking, then control of diabetes, hypertension, and exercise, diet, and care of limb.
Okay.
So in care of limb, we'll ask him to use MCR footwear and to always keep the foot clean and dry, and to avoid injuries.
Foot care. Okay, fine. Foot care. We'll go on next. Continue.
Yes, sir. Sir, and surgical treatment. Removal of gangrenous part by disarticulation of the right little toe at metatarsophalangeal joint, along with incision and drainage of pus in the dorsum of the foot and debridement of the wound. Daily dressing needs to be done, and if required, skin grafting can also be done at a later stage. So the other surgeries which can be done is percutaneous transluminal balloon angioplasty with or without stenting, popliteal to posterior tibial graft bypass, endarterectomy, thrombectomy, or atherectomy. The sympathectomy and omentoplasty not done.
Okay, I hope you know what are these terms which you are mentioning, the atherectomy and so on.
Yes, sir.
I hope the others also know what these terms mean. Like, example, atherectomy means you will mechanically remove this plaque which is there.
Sir.
Okay, and see, you can even put it all together as an endovascular treatment. Also,
Endovascular
you could have
surgery.
put that word should be mentioned. There is a sort of a key word when you mention endovascular treatment. It's where the attention goes there. So you can tell the other options could be endovascular.
Yes, sir.
And here disarticulation, you should know what is race
Sir, I'm not
amputation.
able to hear you, sir.
Hello, you're able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes, sir.
So you're doing the disarticulation. You know, you need to know what is race amputation. Okay. And endarterectomy is usually not performed for lower limb.
Yes, sir.
And sympathectomy you mentioned, yeah, it is good that you put the word that rarely done. I will ask, what is one role for sympathectomy in this era?
Sir, so if bilateral sympathectomy is done for suppose TAO, then the patient might come back to us with retrograde ejaculation.
What is the one indication for sympathectomy?
Sir, severe pain, sir. Non
No, see,
bypassable limb.
no. I'll ask you. When what happens with the sympathetic tone is gone, can you tell me which vessels dilate?
Sir?
When there is a sympathetic tone is gone.
Yes, sir.
Okay, don't try to think about this. Which vessels to go? Which vessels go? The arterioles, the cutaneous,
arteries.
the cutaneous vessels dilate,
Yes, sir.
isn't it? So
Yes, sir.
nothing happens to your medium size and the large size vessels at all. So the only thing which dilates is the cutaneous vessels. So
Yes,
if
sir.
at all, if there is an ulcer, probably it might help the ulcer to heal. That's all.
Heals.
Only to a superficial skin ulcer, it will help the sympathectomy. Other than that, there is no role for sympathectomy. Just you can say that the only role I can think of is a superficial skin ulcer. If it is there, sympathectomy can help. That's all. Other than that, no pain, nothing will happen. Okay, should understand
Yes,
what happens when you do a sympathectomy. So
yes, sir.
that should be good. Yeah. Next,
Sir, that's all.
are we done? Okay, go back. Just some more points. Just on 2 minutes, we have time. So this endovascular treatments are all now picking up. So you need to know how they do this endovascular things. Few points you can read. I know it is not for a UG level discussion. If you know exactly that endovascular options are there, that they do balloon dilatation and so on, should
Yes,
be
sir.
good.
Yes,
Bypass surgeries also, you should understand where they bypass the block, like whether it is a iliofemoral bypass,
sir.
so on. Just note
Femoral,
what are the
iliofemoral.
bypasses. Just you can read. Yes, you can. If you know few bypass names, also it is more than sufficient. Should be good. Then what else you need to know for a UG? You can. Anybody knows what is angiosome concept
Sir,
for the
angiosome.
diabetic? Diabetic foot management. Anybody knows?
No, sir.
Okay, you can check out something with this angiosome, and you should know understand that the endovascular treatments, even though initially it is quite lucrative, we feel that endovascularly I put in, I dilated with a balloon and the flow comes back, so on. But the results don't stay longer. There's maybe an year goes by, the block happens again. Many causes are there. On a long-standing thing, the endovascular treatments are not as promising as they go on. So we need to find some. They're finding solutions. Problems are arising, and we're trying to find the solutions. Also, I'll not go into all those details. So you should understand that even though endovascular is a temporary management, maybe, but many patients, if their general condition is not maintained, they will deteriorate. Okay. Here, as you say, the diabetes is there. Whatever you do endovascular or whatever you do, if the diabetes is not controlled, it will go. Okay. So the general condition, the general health is to be maintained, kept in mind always. Okay, and follow-up is also to be told for the patient. Follow-up, one word you can put across whenever there is possible. Many students don't put a follow-up in the exam. You can tell that I will follow up the patient also. Okay, I think this should be a good for a. This is a common UG case. Try to be prepared with the basic questions which they ask. I think we have covered most of the thing, but still there's lots. Some basic questions, if you're ready with them, answers with the basic questions, the classic questions which I told, you will pass across smoothly, and then added on with more latest developments. And if we find that yes, you're answering more and more depth, we go into the depth. So, but at the beginning, don't try to jump and try to read hi-fi things, and don't try to go for endovascular surgery, that this stents and those things. Better try to read about the anatomy, the how do you examine, how do you classify, what are the basic management, what is a medical line, and those things. And finally, if you're ready with all this, only then go with the endovascular and hi-fi things. I hope I'm very clear with the students. If you do all the hi-fi things, but your basic is weak, and the examiner can easily catch that thing that your basics is weak, so you might even fail, and you will think that I know all the latest thing in the world, but I am failed because you don't know the basics. So take home message, please read basics, read DAS, and when you go to ward, touch the patient, try to do all the simple tests possible, examine all the thing even in a normal individual. Please, even for the PGs, if they are hearing to me, please go examine even normal patients. You will learn what is normal, then only you will be ready to catch what is abnormal. Okay? Okay, I think we can end the session. Is Kishan around?
Sir, actually, I had one more doubt, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, here this patient came with complaints only in the leg, no, sir. But sir, there are many tests which are regarding the upper limb, no, sir, like
I know. See,
sir, so should we do that test or not, sir?
No, you don't have to do the test. When there is no complaint, usually we don't tend to go on doing all the tests for all the vessels. That is why when we take a history itself, since there is no complaint, you will not jump to do all the test of all the arteries around. Okay, I understood your question. Probably like an upper limb ischemia, you'd want to do the exaggerated military test and all those things. No, you don't have to do all this. If it's a lower limb, stick on to lower limb, since there's no complaint with the upper limb. And you thought that when the general examination came, you didn't find any ischemic findings, or radial artery was fine. So a basic idea is there on what it is. So you don't do all the tests. You just stick on to the lower limb.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Satvik.
I intentionally, purposefully didn't tell something in the beginning about Prem sir. That is, he is the first among the 4 in Bangalore to start robotic surgery. He's the pioneer in robotic surgery in Bangalore, and he's also one of the pioneers who started endoscopic surgeries in Bangalore. Maybe he's the one who is routinely doing endoscopic thyroidectomies in Bangalore. And he has achieved a lot in this young age, and really inspiration and role models for all budding surgeons and all the students for that matter. Great, sir.
Thanks,
we're really
Kishan.
proud of you,
Thanks,
and
Kishan.
especially to say we are Prem sir students.
No, thanks, Kishan. First of all, to telling me that I'm young. I'm happy that my student, who himself is a surgeon now, calling me young, so makes me feel really young. It's nice that you remember that many things I've done. It sort of keeps me active. I hope even I'm not trying to praise myself, but I think.
And one more best, epitome to all these, his biggest achievement is to get a fellowship from US university. No, so what is that exactly? I forgot. Many of us have this FRCS and all from UK universities, but you are the one of the rare surgeons who got.
I got the FACS, that is Fellow of American College of Surgeons.
FACS, very difficult to get. US never recognized
there are only around 350 surgeons in all over India, with all specialties included. And one more thing, I got even FRCS also. I got an honorary FRCS also recently. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have FSS and FRCS also.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
ನಮಗೂ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಗೈಡ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಸರ್.
ನೀವೆಲ್ಲ ದೊಡ್ಡವರಪ್ಪ. Nice that I see Kishan and Suraj and so on. I hope even Satvik will.
Sir, thank you so much, sir. It
join
was a
us.
wonderful discussion, and sir, thank you so much for highlighting which all points the
You
UGs
should
have
have
to
called even your
concentrate
dad.
on.
Maybe you would have given more points also, I think. Do say hi to your father also.
Yes, sir,
Okay?
definitely, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
Okay, Kishan.
sometime,
you so much, sir.
some other day shall we have a thyroid discussion, sir, please?
Yeah. Sure,
Whenever you
no problem. Yeah. We'll fix up a thyroid discussion.
Thyroid,
also, not issue. Definitely.
MNG or thyroid carcinoma.
Yeah. Will do. And we'll do a simple
Thank
MNG
you so
for
much.
a UG. Will not go for carcinoma. We'll do an MNG one day.
Yes, sir. MNG.
Anything. We'll fix up
Yes.
someday. No problem. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Kishan.
Thank
Okay,
you
bye.
so much,
All.
sir.
Thank you, guys. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank
Very
you, sir.
good presentation, Satvik. Very well done.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, you
Thank
have
you, sir.
prepared well because of your good preparation and hard work. So many today session was attended by some 270, 280 students. Hope they all got benefited. This is what happens
Thank you, sir.
when you really prepare well and come. Okay, you are answering everything. Okay, and almost all the discussion will happening in 1-2 hours, so that they'll get a thorough view of that entire topic. All the other members, very well done.
Nice
Satvik.
Thank you, sir.
presentation, Satvik. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very well done. Okay. And all other members, thank you for joining us and for your constant support. At 7 o'clock, we have ABG class. Take half an hour break. And 8 o'clock, we will be having this ultrasonography class by Dr. Prajvit Rai. Please join us. And tomorrow, please don't forget, tomorrow we have surgery epignosis national level surgery quiz. So it's going to be very simple quiz, but more of it, it's like learning more than a competition. It's like a learning process, and through each question we'll be discussing on each touching upon one important topic there. So please attempt, or I request each one of you to attempt the quiz. It's going to be very easy, unlike last previous quiz, and even the mains also. And join us tomorrow for the quiz as well. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you,
Suraj.
sir.
Yeah, thank you,
Yes, sir.
Kishan. Thanks a lot.